suspected that, of all people, Chelsea had told me about this. Now, that's not true. I've never met Chelsea Clinton, but apparently Chelsea has a reputation for texting her friends and in the middle of meetings with her parents. But it was a confirmation that, in fact, this meeting actually did take place and that it was an accurate representation of what went on during the meeting.
You also talk about Chelsea Clinton's reaction to the 2008 presidential primary on the Democratic side.
Well, Chelsea, like Bill, her father, and they're very close, felt that the Democratic nomination was practically stolen from her mother, that she deserved to be the presidential candidate, not Barack Obama, and that the Obamas had unfairly characterized her father, Bill Clinton, as a racist during the campaign and had played unfair with him. So she really wanted her mother to get back and challenge Obama and run for president.
Ed Klein, aren't all presidents amateurs when they come into office?
I'd say most of them are, but I don't think, for instance, Dwight Eisenhower was. I think he understood how to be a manager, an executive, how to get things done. I don't think Lyndon Johnson was an amateur when he inherited the presidency after the assassination. I think of Lyndon Johnson, who could not give a good speech, really, who did not speak well from the teleprompter, but who understood how to manipulate the levers of power in Washington. He understood human nature. He understood the strengths and weaknesses of the people in Congress and how to play on those weaknesses and strengths. Obama doesn't seem to have that skill set to use human nature as a way of getting done what he wants to get done in Washington.
How many books have you written?
Well, I think this is my 11th book. There are 3 novels and 8 nonfiction books.
What do you say to some of the critics of your books? You refer to this book as a journalist book.
Yes, but what do the critics say?
Well, some of the criticisms about the accuracy of the stories that you tell, etc.
Right. Well, the fact of the matter is that, as far as I know, there hasn't been a single fact in this book that's been challenged in a kind of credible way. People have said, "Oh, Klein makes things up." Well, that's what kids in the schoolyard, they call each other names. I've been called all kinds of names, but in fact, when it comes to the credibility of my reporting, I don't think anybody's laid a glove on me yet.
And you're the former editor of the New York Times Magazine. How many years did you do that job?
12 years as editor-in-chief of the New York Times Magazine. I also should point out that many of my books have been excerpted by Vanity Fair. And Vanity Fair has one of the most rigorous fact-checking departments in the magazine business. And all of these books that have been excerpted, not a single factual error has been found.
You interviewed Jeremiah Wright for The Amateur. What was that like?
Well, first of all, it was on the record. It was also tape recorded. We sat down for 3 hours, not even across a table. We were just sitting the way you and I are sitting, with a tape recorder on a table on our side. And it was an amazing experience because, first of all, I expected him to be bombastic the way he was on those videos of him with his dashiki and kind of raising his voice and denouncing America, white people, Jews, Israel. None of that happened during our interview. He was very polite, very courteous, low-key, speaking in a modulated voice. Seemed quite intelligent to me. Of course, I don't agree with a lot of the things that he has been videotaped saying, but I must say that during these 3 hours, I believed his stories, and he told me many very interesting stories.
And where is he now as far as his relationship with President Obama?
Well, he clearly feels hurt and bitter that he was thrown under the bus, as he sees it, by Barack Obama and the Obama campaign during 2008. He felt that he had a special relationship with Obama, that went on for 23 years. It is a mistake to think that Barack Obama only knew Jeremiah Wright through sitting in a pew in his church and listening to these sermons. In fact, Barack Obama and Jeremiah Wright had a one-on-one relationship in which they met for literally hundreds of times in the Reverend Wright's home. And at every step of Obama's career, he went to the Reverend Wright for advice, counsel, political direction. So this was a relationship that was closer than any relationship in his life, with the possible exception of his relationship with his own wife, Michelle Obama.
Mr. Klein, does he have any contact right now with the president?
No, there's no contact. After Obama won the presidency, the Reverend Wright told me that he sent him a note congratulating him on achieving his ambition, as he put it, and that he didn't expect the note to get to him directly, so he gave it to a neighbor of Obama's, who the Reverend Wright knew, to hand deliver it. And he doesn't know to this day whether that note was ever delivered.
Who is Steve Rogers, who you also interview in here?
Steve Rogers,
From Chicago.
Steve Rogers is a professor at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University.
And what was his connection with President Obama back in
Like
Chicago?
many African-American businessmen and leaders that whom I interviewed, he was an early backer and supporter of Obama. After Obama lost a congressional primary to Bobby Rush in 2000, Rush is a former Black Panther, but now a congressman. He was deeply in debt. He went around looking for people to donate money to his cause. And Steve Rogers, very successful businessman at that time, before he became a professor, gave him, I believe it was $6,000 to pay off some of his personal debts. In return, Obama promised that he would visit Steve Rogers' students, and if he won the U.S. Senate seat, and speak to them. Well, he did win the U.S. Senate seat. Rogers never heard from him, so he called him up and he asked Obama, would he come? And Obama said, you know, Steve, I'm too busy. I'm getting phone calls from Warren Buffett and from Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and, all these important people. And Rogers said, but you promised. And Obama told him, well, Steve, you're not supposed to believe promises made by
that don't even sound true.
And Rogers got very angry.
This is made up things.
Demanded that he show up. And eventually he did show up, Obama. But the point of the story is that so many of the African American leaders, businessmen, and political people that I've spoken to for this book told me similar stories in which they were there for him, for Obama, in day one. They were what they call day one.
And he betrayed them all.
Supporting him, organizing for him, contributing to him, and that once he was elected to either the Senate and then eventually to the presidency, they never heard again from him. There was a lack of gratitude, a lack of sense of obligation. And it wasn't only African Americans, it was also Jewish American donors who gave him vast sums of money and never got their phone calls returned. It was Oprah Winfrey who worked hard for him and then was frozen out of the White House, and Caroline Kennedy, and on and on and on. So the portrait
that is not even true. This guy is a joke.
Here was a president who,
this guy is a joke.
Who felt that he deserved, he was entitled to all this.
Of course, he need to sell his book, so he's gonna talk all this nonsense.
Ed Klein, what about Michelle Obama? What is her role in the White House?
I love that picture of Michelle Obama. She's a very attractive woman, as you can see in that picture. She's been on the cover of many fashion magazines. In fact, Vogue had her on the cover with the headline, "The First Lady the World Has Been Waiting For." Michelle likes to tell the American public that she has no interest in politics, that she doesn't like politics and doesn't want to get involved in politics, and that her main interest is in raising her children, taking care of her husband, doing some work for her anti-obesity campaign. But my reporting turned up a very different profile of Michelle Obama, a woman who in fact grew up in a household where her father was a political operative of the Daily Machine in Chicago, who was actually weaned on politics as a child, who married Obama knowing of his political ambitions. And so she chose a politician to marry, and who has been his most important political partner at every step of his campaign and every step of his presidency, and has an enormous amount of influence in his decision-making process.
And Klein, all throughout his presidency and earlier, we've always heard that Michelle Obama did not want him to run for office necessarily, and she was the reluctant half.
But we've heard that story. It's a great story.
Mm-hmm.
It's
But you don't like that one,
the story
right?
of a woman who doesn't seem to have any ambition, either for herself or her husband. But in fact, that's not the Michelle Obama that I found when I
that won't sell your book.
interviewed her close friends, people who knew her when, back in Chicago days, people who now know her. Michelle Obama loves being First Lady. She's a very, very intelligent, well-educated, well-spoken woman with great opinions, strong opinions, but who also has a reputation earned for liking a very comfortable lifestyle. And here in the White House, she has people taking care of her every want and wish. She, as you know, has gone on many, many vacations, some of them quite controversial, to Spain and to the ski slopes out in the west of the United States. She spent at one point during a period of several months 42 days on vacation. She's living the life of a very pampered woman, and apparently this fits with her personality.
You write, whereas the Clintons were open and above board about their co-presidency, boasting that Hillary was an equal partner with Bill, the Obamas have been careful to hide the fact that Michelle is the president's most important political advisor and the one he listens to above all others before he makes major decisions.
Yes, and I think that's so true. The way she does that is often through her very best friend, how she gets her opinions through. Her very best friend, Valerie Jarrett. Valerie Jarrett is a woman who hired Michelle many, many years ago to work with her in Mayor Daley's administration in Chicago.